When German soldiers searched dead Americans in Normandy, they found something no army on Earth gave to a private. And it was not a weapon. This video covers the single strangest thing the United States did in World War II. It covers the 500 million maps America printed, the compasses hidden inside uniform buttons, and the reason a German private was never allowed to see the plan, while an American private carried it in his pocket. It is the story of why one army broke when its officers died, and the other did not. Stay until the end, because the man who made this possible never fired a shot, and what his workers built in a converted warehouse in Washington may have decided the war in Europe. How does the most powerful nation on Earth go to war without knowing what the world looks like? In 1941, that was America's problem. The U.S. Army owned almost no usable maps of the places it was about to fight. Not of North Africa, not of France, not of the Pacific Islands where Marines would soon be dying on beaches they could not find on a chart. The Army Map Service was created that year out of a merger of two small offices, working out of a converted warehouse in Washington, D.C. Its presses were built for peacetime. Then, the War Department handed it an order for an army that did not yet exist. So they hired. They ran the presses around the clock, and they recruited women by the hundreds, training them as cartographers, engravers, and draftsmen. The press called them the military Mapping Maidens. According to the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, they became part of the largest map-making effort in human history. So how many maps does it take to invade a continent? The numbers are almost impossible to picture. According to the Army Map Service's own records, between 1941 and 1945, they prepared 40,000 different maps covering 400,000 square miles of the Earth's surface and printed over 500 million copies. North Africa alone required 1,000 different maps and 10 million copies. But Normandy broke every record. The invasion needed 3,000 separate maps, printed in nearly 70 million copies. Here is the part that stunned the Germans. Those maps were not for generals. The majority went into the hands of sergeants, corporals, and privates. Men who in the German army would never have been trusted with a document showing anything past the 50 yards in front of their foxhole. Why would giving a soldier a map be considered a threat? Because of how the German army thought. In the Wehrmacht, information flowed downward in drops. A battalion commander knew the division's objective. A company commander knew his piece of it. The common rifleman knew almost nothing. He was told where to march, where to dig, where to shoot. If his officer was killed, he waited for another officer. A private carrying a printed map of the operational area was not just unusual. It was dangerous. A man who knew the plan could be captured, and a man who carried a map could hand your secrets to the enemy on a single sheet of paper. The Americans looked at the exact same problem and reached the opposite conclusion. A man who does not know the plan cannot adapt when the plan falls apart. And on a beach swept by machine gun fire, with officers dead and radios drowned, the plan always falls apart. What happens if a soldier loses everything he carries? America planned for that too. At a top-secret facility outside Washington, an operation called MISX built escape and evasion equipment for men who might one day be captured. They produced maps printed not on paper but on rayon. Everyone called it silk. According to the Australian War Memorial, the Americans produced over 4.5 million of these maps for the Air Force alone, plus 3 million more for the Navy. They folded to the size of a cigarette pack, made no noise, and did not tear when soaked. They were sewn into jacket linings and hidden in boot heels. They made compasses so small they fit inside a uniform button, or a cufflink. The tools were smuggled to prisoners of war inside game boards and sports equipment, in relief packages the Germans inspected and approved. Think about who these were for. Not generals, privates and sergeants. Men whose equivalent in the German army would have been expected to sit in a camp and wait for the war to end. So when did all that paper actually matter? in the fields of Normandy. The hedgerows were not hedges. They were ancient earth walls, 4 to 6 feet high, topped with trees, roots so thick a Sherman tank could not push through. Every field was a fortress. Companies that should have advanced a mile gained 200 yards and lost a third of their men. Here, the difference between the two armies stopped being an idea and became survival. A German squad defending a hedgerow knew its own field and the position of the machine gun to its left. If the squad leader was killed, the men held their ground and waited for a new officer. That was not cowardice, that was doctrine. An American squad had a map showing not just their hedgerow, but the 3 beyond it, the sunken lane to the west, the orchard east, the road junction the company had to take. If the sergeant died, the corporal read the same map. If the corporal died, a private pulled the map from a dead man's pocket and kept moving. By the summer of 1944, German officer casualties in Normandy were shattering their command structure. A company that lost its commander lost its ability to adapt. The German army had built the finest small unit tactics in the world on a simple bargain. The NCOs would act, and the officers would think. It worked as long as the officers survived. When they did not, the system did not bend. It broke. The American army bled in those hedgerows too, but it did not stop, because the information needed to keep moving did not die with any single man. It was distributed. It lived in every pocket. To match it, the German army would have had to rebuild itself from the foundation, to trust the common soldier, to share the plan, to believe a conscripted farmer deserved the same knowledge as a staff officer in Berlin. It never did. The Germans saw abundance and called it waste. What they were actually looking at was a country that had decided, at enormous cost, that the mind of a single private soldier was worth 70 million sheets of paper.